You know, there's a lot of dirt roads up there, and I love them. But I'm telling you, the racing thing is so much fun. I have never set a single wheel on the track at Bulls Gap, though. I've not set a wheel there at Volunteer Speedway. I hear it is a trip because the bank is what, 36 degrees?
Yeah, it's a famous dirt track. You know, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, dirt racing. That's what I did until I became a full-time NASCAR racer. And Bulls Gap is like the iconic dirt track of Tennessee because it's got such high bank, kind of short place. So you'll have a wonderful time there. Hey, tell us a little bit more, though. And I'm going to back up, but I'm not going to back up that far. Tell us about Stand On It. I really enjoyed the show because of it's a fun take off of Smokey and the Bandit. And I remember you saying it was a tribute to Hal Needham.
Yeah.
And Hal Needham, you know, owned a NASCAR team at one time that Harry
the Skull Bandit.
Yep.
Skull Bandit. Well, Burt was, I think Burt was partners with him in that.
Yeah.
I think they won a couple of championships.
They ran very well. They were, we always... Harry Gant was called Mr. October because he'd win 2 or 3 races every October, and he was a good-looking guy for his age, so they called him Handsome Harry when everybody had nicknames.
Harry up there rim riding around the top of the racetrack.
Yeah.
You know?
So tell everybody listening about Stand On It, because I think I loved it. It was funnier than heck.
Oh, thank you. Well, Stand On It is our tribute to Smokey and the Bandit. When I was 16, they were. I heard I lived in Atlanta. By that time, my mother worked for IBM. She moved us to Atlanta. So I went to high school in Atlanta, and at 16 in 1976, I heard on my radio that Burt Reynolds and Hal Needham were at the Lakewood Fairgrounds filming a movie with fast cars. So I skipped school and I went there. Now, I've been in theater since I was 8 years old. So this wasn't like I just made some cavalier decision. It was like, oh, there's my opportunity. So I went to the fairgrounds, I parked in the dirt, I climbed the fence, I found some guy with a radio and tapped him on the shoulder and said, hey, man, I'm sorry I'm late, but traffic on I-85 was a bear. Where's hair and makeup?
This is classic. I can hear this.
Yeah. Well, and nobody wants ever to admit they have no idea who you are, or he didn't want to risk being wrong. So I got into hair and makeup, and he brought me a breakfast sandwich. After about 20 minutes, I got a breakfast sandwich. I got a nice little Tuttle tan going, and wound up spending the day with a fellow New Yorker, which was Jackie Gleason. So I spent probably 4 or 5 hours with the man who was to become Buford T. Justice to the world, but he wasn't yet. I mean, nobody had seen the movie yet. And then I'm in the very last shot when Jackie chases after Bert and Sally and Son and Jerry and the dog in the Cadillac. A tire falls off the cop car and hits this tall, there's a whole bunch of people on the right-hand side. It hits this tall, gangling 16-year-old with a black cowboy hat and a blue jean vest in the shin. And then they freeze frame and roll credits. So I'm in the movie for about 4 minutes, but it's just one frame.
Claim to fame.
Well, but I tell you, it gave me, it took a lot of nerve to do that, but I did that. I'm not making any of that up. So the same 16-year-old that did that 2 years later brought a 6-pack of beer to an audition at the Omni International Hotel. Opened up a can of beer while I was sitting there. And you know what auditions are like, Mike. So I'm in there. I open up a can of beer. I'm 18 years old. Got my feet on the coffee table. I drink the beer and offer the secretary one. Where are my manners? You want a beer? And that made such an impression on one of the producers. And I told him that I was from Snellville, Georgia. I grew up on a farm. I didn't give him my resume. I didn't tell him I was from Westchester County, New York. Nothing. And I told him I was 24 because they were looking for people 24 to 30. I was 18.
Fair catch made.
And
15-yard line.
hey, hold that thought.
Such an impression on one of the guys that later he told me That's Bo Duke. But the other guy said, over my dead body, this hit is going to be on my television.
1 yard gain on the play.
Yeah, so it was great. You don't get a second chance to make the first impression. But one of the lies, I think you'll like this, Mike. One of the lies I told during that time was that I had just finished first in my class at the Georgia School of High Performance Driving, and there is no such thing. But
you had a professional line of BS going, didn't you?
Oh yeah. Well, you call it that. I call it acting. But I tell you, one of the great things is later on is the reason I did Bandit is Hal and I have become really good friends. And when we first started hanging out, it was Hal Needham and Al Ruddy and Stan Barrett and I. And I think he was the first driver of the Skull Bandit car.
Yep.
Well, he said eventually after we were talking, when I said at some point, I said, Hal, I was in Smokey and the Bandit. And he said, you weren't in Wait a minute. Were you that kid that climbed the fence and BS this way? And I said, that was me. And we shared a beer over that. And then later, when Bert became a friend, I said, I was in Smokey and the Bandit. He said, who were you in? Wait a minute. You were the kid that nobody could figure out what the hell you were doing there. And I said, that was me. And he said, John, no wonder you're famous. Oh, my gosh.
That's a great story,
time.
man. The hat on backwards, a six-pack of beer, and you're here to audition for
Yeah,
Bo
I did.
Duke.
I had my hat on backwards long before these folk country folks started.
9 yard gain on the play.
Oops, I might have hurt somebody's feelings just then.
That's a shame. Hey, we're talking to John Schneider. We'll be back in a second. We'll talk more racing. We'll talk Dukes of Hazzard, and then some. No telling where we're going to go. You're listening to Fast Car to NASCAR with Mike Wallace on the Speed Sport Podcast Network and NASCAR Digital Media.
Before we get back to Fast Car 2 NASCAR with Mike Wallace. With everything from resto mods to numbers matching classics, American muscle to European exotics, watch as a dazzling array of vehicles cross the block at the GAA Classic Cars Auction. Tune in on MAV TV Thursday, September 9th for Speed Sport Presents the GAA Classic Cars Auto Auction. Check your local listings for channel and time.
Welcome back. You're listening to Fast Car to NASCAR with Mike Wallace. My name is Jeff Kent. Our guest today, John Schneider, Bo Duke from the Dukes of Hazzard. Take it away, Mike Wallace.
Well, John, it was so much fun. The first little segment, we're talking about how you just snuck onto the set of Smokey and the Bandit. I mean, that's incredible. Jeff's telling me during the break.
I snuck on with authority.
Yeah. And how do you do it? What's authority?
I didn't sneak on and hide.
Were you cocky?
No, you just got to be confident, right?
No, I was apologetic. I was apologetic, because I was late.
Oh, you were late. That's right. Traffic was backed up. Yeah.
Well, everybody knows that traffic is always a bear on I-85. So you got to.
On the 26-yard line.
So hey,
I got to be very specific in your fabrication.
Yeah, I got to ask this question. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking about you jumping the fence. I can see this confident kid, rolls up there.
And you know the place. You knew the fairgrounds, right?
Yeah, so how did you get to the point where they actually said, okay, you're in the deal, they paid you something or had you sign something? When did that happen?
Nope, they didn't pay me anything, and I didn't sign anything.
Really?
Just like this gig here, right?
We were on the midway. What? We were on the midway of the fairgrounds there, in the shade of the. I guess there was a track, right? It was a
racetrack.
And then a beautiful roller coaster. So we were in the midway of the track, and that's where the circus was. And then there was a fence around that was just naturally there, and all of the folks who had showed up legitimately to be extras in the movie were just out there kind of baking.
I got you. Now I got it.
I was sitting in there with Jackie and Burt was I didn't meet Burt Reynolds that day, but he was in the scene. And I want to say that in the very last shot when they drove the Cadillac away, it was Burt and it was Jerry, but I don't think Sally was there. I think that was her stunt double. I think.
2nd and 6.
But
Ball on the
anyway,
41-yard line.
you have to have, and here's what Denver Pyle called it. And folks, Denver Pyle guest with my Uncle Jesse on Dukes. And he said, John, never lose your greatest gift. And I said, what is that? And he said, you have the strength of your ignorance.
The strength
And he
of
said,
your
no,
ignorance.
that's not a dig. He said, what that means is you don't know that what you have done. And I was, at this point, 18. And he said, you don't know that what you have just pulled off is impossible. And I said, Denver, this is at least the second time I've done it.
So we refer to that in the race world. You don't know what you don't know.
There you go. You don't know what you don't know. So God forbid anybody tells you what you don't know.
Yeah.
But as you get older, and I think you can attest to this, as you get older, wisdom is realizing every day that you know less than you thought you did yesterday.
I have no idea what you just said.
Well, that's a good sign. That's a good sign.
All right. Well, let's go
I like
forward
that.
just a little bit from the Bandit, Smokey and the Bandit, and probably I would have to say your original most iconic moment is being Bo Duke. We all grew up around that. I loved it. It was so
I
much
never
fun.
did.
Well, that's what I want to hear. Hey, let me jump back one thing. How was Jackie Gleason? What was he like in person?
He was great. But I'll tell you why he was great is at the time, I think he was living in Peekskill, New York, which is in Westchester County. If it wasn't Peekskill, it wasn't Patterson, that's New Jersey. Anyway, he was living in Westchester County. So when I came up to him and I said, hello, Mr. Gleason, love your work. Now remember, I'm 18, but I've been doing theater and magic and playing guitar and really out there beating the streets for at that point like 8 years. Even though I'm only 16 years old. But I knew Jackie Gleason. I knew his work. It was wonderful. The great one. It was fantastic. But what really made him say, "Sit down, kid," was. Is the beer better at the Bullpen or the Elbow Room? And those are two bars in Westchester County, in Mount Kisco, actually. Well, one's in Mount Kisco, one's in Bedford Hills. And he looked up at me and is like, I like you, kid. Because he was sitting, he had a little kid next to him that had one of those red wagons full of ice, and it had a beer keg in it. And he would drink his drink and then just hold his hand out, kind of like he holds his cigarette out as Cletus or as Buford T. Justice. And the kid would grab the mug and then fill it back up with beer. That's what he did all day. So he and I spoke bars for 10 or 15 minutes, and then we talked about show business and the honeymooners and all that kind of stuff, and the hustler. So it was wonderful. In fact, I wrote a report because remember I skipped school, so I wrote the only report I ever got an A on in English class was my report about hanging out with Jackie Gleason on set.
Incredible report. All right.
Yeah, it was. I wish I had that. I wish I could find that somewhere. But I believe that we know what we're supposed to. Let me rephrase that. We know what we are. We know what we're supposed to be. We're all a tool in God's tool chest anyway. So what are you? Are you a pair of vice grips? Are you a screwdriver? If you're a screwdriver, you're a flathead. Are you a star bit? What are you? What are you? A Phillips? What the hell are you? And I knew from about 8 years old on, because I'm one of these kids who went to the movies every Saturday, double feature. I knew that that's what I was supposed to be doing. It wasn't like, oh, gee, golly, I want to be in the movies. I did, but it was like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. So when the opportunity came to
Kansas City
BS my way onto the set of Smokey and the Bandit,
back to return.
I looked at that as, I think I said it early on. I said, oh, there's an opportunity. I'm going to seize it. And then when Dukes came about,
On the return.
when I read that, I thought, oh, that's mine. That's absolutely mine. All I have to do is go get it. Now, bear in mind, gentlemen, that week I auditioned to replace John Travolta in Welcome Back, Kotter,
Oh, no kidding.
and auditioned for a movie with Robert Duvall called The Great Santini. I didn't get either one of those, but I did get, after about 5.5 weeks, I did get
Jordan
the Dukes
on
of
the
Hazzard.
run. Loss of 2 on the play.
So as much as people would like to think I was out doing yard work and somebody said, oh my God, there's Bo, and then my life changed from that moment on, it's just not true.
Hey, John, speaking of things that people know or don't know, one of the things I saw online yesterday, you did a bit called 10 Things People Don't Know About the Dukes of Hazzard. And you spent a couple of minutes talking about the General Lee and how many jumps it made and where the original General Lee is, or what. How many versions of the General Lee were there?
Jordan with the reception.
Well, we had,
7-yard
my
gain
memory
on
of
the play.
when we were filming initially in Georgia, there were 3. And there's
Third
one
and
that's
5.
considered Lee
Ball on
1,
the 27-yard
which
line.
was when there were 3 cars in a parking lot, and we hadn't used them yet, so somebody labeled them 1, 2, and 3. So Lee 1 is Lee 1 just because somebody put that sticker in there. But it's the only one that's left from those original days. And I do know where it is, but I'm not at liberty to say.
Well, now, I've heard that golfer Bubba Watson has a General Lee. Would that be the original or
Well,
not?
I signed Bubba's General Lee a couple of years ago. I traded an autograph for a round of golf with him,
Nice.
and it was great.
At the 25-yard line.
And
Chiefs
that
will
was
start the
Lee
drive
1.
At the 25-yard line. First
That
and
was
10.
Lee 1, but I don't believe Bubba has it anymore. I don't know. And I had heard, on and off, you hear things.
Second and 8.
I'd heard that he took the flag off, and then I saw the car with Bubba and the flag on. So I have no idea.
Right. Yeah, I heard that
People
same
just
story.
like to stir crap out there, you know. So I tell you, playing a round of golf with I mean, I know I'm a terrible golfer, but there's no word to describe how terrible I really am in comparison to Bubba Watson.
Yeah, I think we'd all be terrible next to Bubba.
Yeah, but thank
speaking-
God he can't sing.
First and 10.
Because, you know,
Ball on the 43-yard line.
a little my math on how many General Lees we had, though. We did 158 shows, and we wrecked 2 cars a show. So a little over 300 there, and then there has to be a little margin for error. So my educated guess is 329.
Wow.
Ball on the 48.
And they were everything from 318 to 440 to 340 to 340 Magnum, 440 Magnum. But never once. People ask me this all the time. You know, it sounded like the General Lee was a 4-speed, but when you see us shifting, it's obviously an automatic. Well, we never had a 4-speed car. I've only had one 4-speed 69 Charger, and if you tried to shift that thing and operate a clutch and throw it 180 with the emergency, it's not possible.
Hey,
You just can't do it.
You probably don't know this, John, but back when we were talking about that show we worked on, The Bandit, 25 years ago, you taught me how to do a 180 spin,
Touchback.
or advised me with the emergency brake. I'd never done that
Yeah,
before.
buddy.
They blew the air,
Yeah,
put a bunch
buddy.
of air in the rear tires, and you reach down,
Yep.
you hold on the lever, you dispense the emergency brake, and that baby will spin out in a minute, man.
Oh, yeah, you slam it on it. It locks up the rear brakes. In fact, when I get off the phone with you guys, I'm going to go out because there's one shot we need for Poker Run because I'm not happy with the shot we have. Remember, there's a great shot of Smoking the Bandit when the Trans Am is coming down the road and all of a sudden those beautiful honeycomb
Jordan
wheels
on
just
the run.
lock up on the rear
No
end.
gain on the play.
Yep.
You know, and you can see them and you can read Goodyear on those tires. I think they were white letter tires.
Second and 10.
Well, currently we've got a shot where I do that, and the emergency brake didn't work quite as well, so the tires kind of slowed down. They didn't lock up. And the 16-year-old in me is very unhappy with that. So since you reminded me of that, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do that shot again. And I'm going to get, so when you see Poker Run and you see the most beautiful shot since 1977, you'll know that it's your fault.
Well, I appreciate that, because I want to give you a lot of credit. For us, at least through my career, I know of 3 rental cars that I rolled the tires off the wheel because of you. You know, so it was, you know, back in the day before all that cell phone stuff and picture phones and all that, you could do, you know, part of racing back then was the good time that happened on Thursday, Friday, Saturday night in the motel parking lot. And man, we had some experiences, and it all come from that experience.
Don't kid yourself. When we're done with this show today, we're going to go have some fun in my Mustang right out here on the side.
Yeah.
You got to. You got to.
Especially, you know, with the, if you get the car with the center emergency brake, you pull lever, you know, you don't have to reach down there to the brake, the emergency brake.
I got it.
Oh, my God.
The brake on my Challenger is very tricky to stand on a car because it locks at the bottom.
Yeah.
So you've got to stomp on it and take your foot off and then stomp on it again. So it's got a little bit more going on in there than the General Lee. In the General Lee, we used to pull that metal handle back and either bend the whole thing over so the brake would never engage, would never lock, or we'd take a little pair of those little needle nose vice grips, pull the brake out, shove the vice grips up there and clamp it down so that you didn't have to mess with that handle.
See, that's some good old redneck fun right
Here's
there.
something for all you folks. If you watch those great old movies, you'll always know if they didn't do that, because you'll see that the stuntman is driving and kind of leaning forward. That's because he's got his hand on that little T grip. And he's pulling that handle for all he's worth while he's driving, while he's stomping on the emergency brake. And it's great fun. I love it. I wanted to be a stuntman. That was going to be my foray into Hollywood, but then I couldn't sell my car. I had a dear friend I went to high school with named Jack Gill, and we were going to move. I graduated high school in '77. I was going to move to California with him, but I couldn't sell my car. At 18, when I got Dukes of Hazzard, he was not my first stunt double, but he doubled me in Dukes of Hazzard. The guy I was going to move with to California to be a stuntman wound up being my double on the second season of Dukes of Hazzard.
That's cool.
And how cool is that?
Yeah, I know it. All right, we're talking to John Schneider, Bo Duke from the Dukes of Hazzard, and so much more. When we come back, maybe we talk some country music. He's a country music singer, too.
We'll talk about your dad and trucks and Truck On. We've got a new album called Truck On. Let's do that.
I like it. You're listening to Fast Car to NASCAR with Mike Wallace on the Speed Sport Podcast Network and NASCAR Digital Media. Before we get back to Fast Car to NASCAR with Mike Wallace, getting down and dirty doesn't have to represent odd jobs anymore. Take a seat on the cushion as Kyle Armstrong brings you the latest in dirt late model action from across the country. It's Forward Bite, and the latest episode is available now on the Speed Sport Podcast Network, NASCAR Digital Media, and your favorite podcast platforms. Welcome back. You're listening to Fast Car to NASCAR with Mike Wallace on the Speed Sport Podcast Network and NASCAR Digital Media. My name is Jeff Kent. Our guest today, John Schneider, Bo Duke from the Dukes of Hazzard. He's an actor. He's a film producer, director. He's a country music singer. Mike Wallace?
And a really good one, if I may say so.
Oh, shucks.
Shucks. Just old shucks. Tell us a little bit about that country music career. We love it.
Well, I grew up in New York State. Rural New York, really. And my dad played in a square dance band with a bunch of fellow pilots. He was a general aviation pilot, flew a V-tail Bonanza. And his band, the Crop Dusters, were great. And I used to, my parents were divorced, so I didn't hang out with my dad a lot. But when I did, I would go watch him play. So I'd sit down next to the drum kit. My dad would be up front wearing a black cowboy hat, playing a guitar, calling square dances. And that really made a huge impression on me. So when I made the realization at the ripe old age of 8 that entertainment, movies, and all that was what I was supposed to do, music became a big part. So most of the first shows and things that I did were musicals, like Little Abner and Annie Get Your Gun and The Music Man and The Mikado and Fiddler on the Roof, shows like that. So by the time I had, when Dukes came around, I had been doing theater for 10 years, and I did my first album, oddly enough, in the building where we shot Daisy's song on Dukes of Hazzard. It was called Master Sound in Atlanta on Spring Street. And I had done an album at 16 years old, the same year I snuck onto the set of Smokey and the Bandit, or with Authority, remember. I had done an album called The Small One in that same recording studio. So when Dukes came around, word got out because Tom and I, Wopat and I, would sit around and play our guitars all the time. And that's actually how we met. That's another story. We met in the bathroom. I saw his guitar and said, "Hey, who are you?" But they heard that I sang, so I wound up on the Dinah Shore show back in 1979. I sang a Ronnie Milsap song. Well, people heard that, and then I did the People's Choice Awards, and I sung "Still," the Lionel Richie song. And a company called the Scotty Brothers heard that, and I got a call, or my management got a call the next day, and next thing I knew, I had a record deal at Scotty Brothers for CBS, and the first song that I did, the first album I did, was called "It's Now or Never," which is still the top charting Elvis cover of all time. In fact, because of that, it has earned me a display at Graceland, which I'm so very proud of. I've not seen it. I haven't been to Memphis in a while, but I have a display with my "It's Now or Never" album at Graceland in Memphis.
Well, that's quite an honor right there.
It is a tremendous honor. Yep, tremendous honor. So I did 4 albums, I believe, for Scotty Brothers. "It's Now or Never," "Quiet Man," "If You Believe." The Dukes of Hazzard album was done. It's a great album. If you've not heard, it's so much fun. If only to hear the 2 songs by Jimmy Best and Sorrel Book, it's worth its weight in gold. It's a wonderful, wonderful album.
You ever get to hang out with Waylon?
Oh yeah, used to hang out with Waylon. And Dukes had the celebrity speed trap thing, so I had a great opportunity to meet a bunch of wonderful people: Mickey Gilley, Dottie West, Loretta Lynn. Loretta was in it might have been the first season, and she needs all our prayers right now because her Dude Ranch is right there in the middle of all that flooding.
Oh, goodness! Yeah.
I just read that on the way up here. That's a shame. It's
terrible.
Horrible
and
floods
we
over
flooded
in Tennessee.
here. We had our 100-year flood followed by our 1,000-year flood in 2016, so we understand what's going on. In fact, as soon as we get done with Bulls Gap, we're going to go there. We've got my wife organized two tractor trailers full of supplies. We're going to be bringing there Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, handing them out next week.
Nice.
So when you come to Bulls Gap, if you have any extra toothpaste or any supplies, please feel free to bring them, and we'll put them in our truck. One of our trucks is the stage that we use, so we're going to fill that up with supplies. We're going to fill 2 other semis up with supplies and bring them there. But anyway, all that to say that I had great relationships with country music stars, and then wound up going over from CBS to MCA, and that's where the first album I did was called "Too Good to Stop Now," and it had "I've Been Around Enough to Know" and "Country Girls" on it, and both of those went #1. Shortly after, or as rather, Dukes was going off the air, I was having #1 songs. So I'd love to claim that was because of some great plan of mine, but it was back again. I'm the kind of guy who prepares for and expects opportunity to show up at every turn. And I think because I think that way, it does.
2nd and 9.
And I believe that if you thought that way, it would too, whoever's listening.
So
yeah. A friend of mine, years ago, we were talking about something, and I'd say, well, just go out and do it. And he said, no, John, you talk that way because of who you are, or you think that way because of who you are. And I said, no, Phil, I'm who I am because I think that way.
First down, Raiders.
And chew on that for a moment.
I'm going to back that up just for a second, and we're going to go back to the beginning because I'm very intrigued by your confidence, your enthusiasm. Tell me how the 8-year-old boy at that time in his life knew that he wanted to be an artist. What do you think made that happen?
Well, it's there's a difference, and I can't figure out how to explain it. It's not that I wanted to be an artist. It's that I realized I was. I had, if I was going to write a book report, I would write a book, or at least I'd set out to. It was a dark, dingy morning, and the sun was coming over this. I was. I always thought, and still do, in big pictures. And when you see the movies, I think you can attest to this, Mike. When you saw it, even a fun car movie, Stand on It, the composition was good. The people looked like heroes. It's shot well. Because I was an 8-year-old sitting and watching these great movies like John Wayne's movies, The Cowboys or The Wild Bunch or Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. So I knew it, but not in a cocky way. It's so hard to. There's a difference between wanting to race a car and knowing you're a race car driver. I believe that Wayne Gretzky knew he was a hockey player. Whether he wanted to play hockey or not, he knew he was a hockey player. So I never let go of that. And of course, I tell people that if you're 50 years old and you hate what you do, take a little time, go back to being 7 or 8, and try to remember what it was that you were sure you were when you were 7 or 8. And identify with that, and then take steps immediately. Don't quit your job, but take steps. And immediately start doing that which you were built to do.
But nobody wants to pay me for doing tricks with a yo-yo.
I don't know if they paid Tommy Smothers.
So, John, having said all that,
Carl Edwards. Carl is just a frustrated gymnast. He's a hell of a driver. Was a hell of a driver. But Carl got off more on doing those backflips than he did on driving.
Right. Having said all that, John, are you a race car driver then?
I am. When I got in the car. When I got in the General Lee, first of all, I love throwing the car around trees and corners and all that kind of stuff. But I will tell you, though, I have yet to make the connection between my car and the General Lee. As soon as I make the connection between my car and the General Lee, everything that I've known for 45 years, longer than that, I used to play with my 74 4-speed Capri in the parking lot at General Electric when it would freeze over every winter.
Oh, absolutely.
So I knew what to do then. I'm going to equate dirt track to golf. I've had enough people explain to me what I need to do that I'm kind of like the centipede. You go up to the centipede and you go, dude, how in the world do you move all those legs at the same, just a little up, and then you can't move? So I've got to relate my car to the General Lee. My biggest issue is that I might get these numbers wrong. In my real General Lee, I've got 16-1 steering, and in my race car, I've got 8-1.
There you go.
Right?
Yep.
So that, it might just, now that I've said that, it might just be that I need to trade my steering box out.
Well, what you always you always want to remember, as your race car, there is no reset switch, and there's not an inventory of them in the parking lot for you.
No, and I hit the wall already. So I hit the wall at about 95.
That hurts. Yeah.
Big wreck or little wreck?
About 6 weeks.
Okay.
I was at Longdale in Longdale, Oklahoma. Big track, big track, long speedway. Avoided the first wreck in front of me and did not quite avoid the second one, and then got in my own with the wall.
Okay. Now, this is a serious question here in regards to your racing. Do you have guys that work on your car? Do you turn a few wrenches yourself, or you just hop in the driver's seat and go sell some swag?
Currently, because I'm the movie guy and I do concerts, I have a guy that is working on the car. Okay. I want to get out of that and work on the car myself, but I also know that when I did Dukes of Hazzard, I had a shop called John Schneider's Celebrity Machine, and every car I touched had to be repaired after.
One of your early talents was not mechanical, is what you're telling us.
No, and I wanted it to be, but that speaks to the 8-year-old. That as soon as I got on a stage, or as soon as I got in front of a microphone or a camera, I was so comfortable that, I knew that that's what I was supposed to do. I have wanted to be a mechanic all my life, and every time I turn a wrench, I screw something up.
All right, we're going to run out of time here in a moment. John, tell us about your events that you do around the country.
We finally got to the event.
Yeah,
well,
I'm sorry.
The event is called
as long as we got enough time, we can keep talking. It's up to you.
I'll throw it in a nutshell. It's Bo's Extravaganza. Friday night, we have a meet and greet and a concert, and we'll be watching Stand On It on a big screen. We bring a portable drive-in. It's 50 feet tall. It looks like a big kid's jolly jumper. So we bring that, and we really hang out. We hang out and talk like you and I, like we're talking right now. So that's Friday night, and we watch Stand On It, which is great on a little screen, even better on a big screen. Saturday, it's all about autographs and music and stunts. We've got a stunt crew coming in that'll teach people to do high falls if they want. We're bringing an airbag. So how great is that? Then on Saturday night, we are gonna we pack the track. I sing the national anthem. We do hot laps. Hopefully, we do well enough to be able to be in the main event, to be in the last race. I don't know, because like I said, I've never put a wheel on that dirt yet. So hopefully we'll earn a place. We did something a couple weeks ago where we were given a place, and that was like being given the gift of being able to play in the NFL. You will get your butt kicked. So I don't want to be track traffic. If I'm going to be out there in that race, I want to earn the right to be out there in that race. So I'm going to do my damnedest to earn the right to be out there in that race.
There you go. Go get him, John Schneider. Hey, thank you for
Sunday. We've got Cowboy Church. So Cowboy Church, we have a local pastor. He's bringing his whole congregation, and we're going to have Cowboy Church down there in the field. We're going to be playing music, and I want everybody to come, make a new friend, be a new friend, and be reminded that we live in the single greatest country in the world. And it's not because of our, and I say this loosely, leadership, it's because of our people. We are part of what's right with the United States of America. We've got to get back out, shake hands, make a new friend, and just as important, be a new friend to somebody else. That's what the weekend is about, and I want to see everybody there.
Amen, brother.
John, before we close out, Jeff's going to close us out, but tell us how's all your fans find out what you got for sale? Where can they buy Stand On It? Things of that nature, swag.
Well, I'm so glad you asked. You can get Stand On It at JohnSchneiderStudios.com, JohnSchneiderStudios.com, or the easiest thing to do is get my app. I have an app, Mike. How about that?
Well, you're big time.
61-year-old with his
All the
own
way
app.
from the Dukes of Hazzard to an app.
That's
Now,
dangerous.
I know, right? But it'll take you to the store. It'll take you everywhere. It'll even take you. We have our own streaming service. We don't. I don't agree with a lot of the things that Netflix shows and does. So we have nothing to do with them. We have our own streaming service called Cineflix, DOD. We are vehemently independent. We are aggressively independent. So if you like what you've been listening to the last half an hour or 4 days or however long we've been talking, then I want you to please support JohnSchneiderStudios.com. We've got movies, we've got music, we've got a wonderful album that is part of Stand On It, and it's sold. It's a tribute to our nation's truck drivers. So it's called Truck On. Get a hold of all that stuff. If you want to get it autographed, and what I recommend is you just come to the event and you can get it from us. We'll have Stand On It with us. We'll have Truck On. We'll have the music and the T-shirts, all that stuff. Come on out, have a great time. Spend some time during the VIP night. Like I said, it's not a quick thing. We're just going to have fun. We are going to have fellowship. We're going to enjoy one another's company. We're going to watch a movie.
Very well said, John Schneider, and thank you for your time today. We appreciate it. Okay?
You are welcome. You take care, and I will see you somewhere in turn 3.
Mother truckers, you've been listening to Fast Car to NASCAR with Mike Wallace on the Speed Sport Podcast Network and NASCAR Digital Media.
Watch your eyes. Get some slug going. All right, let's go.
The offense calls a timeout. Jordan with the reception. 1 yard gain on the play. Third and 6. Ball on the 37-yard line.
Will. Let's go, boys. Watch the snap down. Ain't no thing. Danny. Bring it up. Hey, watch that screen. Here we go, baby. Rock and roll. Run it.
First down, Raiders. First and 10. Ball on the 13-yard line.
Get it up. Set. Look. Throw it now.
Touchdown, Oakland. Kickoff returned 19 yards. They'll start the drive at the 19-yard line. First and 10. Gonzalez makes the reception. 35-yard gain on the play.
Hey, watch the screen. Get it, son. You got motion. It's on. All right, let's go.
Morrison on the interception.
Defense, get ready. Let's turn it up, D. Let's do our thing. Let's do our thing. Don't stop. Don't stop that motor. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. We coming to rock.
The offense calls a timeout. Jordan, the ball carrier, 9-yard gain on the play. Second and 1.
Let's go now.
Ball on the 50-yard line.
They don't get nothing. Let's go now. Let's go. Knock him out. Turn it up now. Hey, let's go. From the start, from the start. Let's go. There we go.
Jordan with the reception, first down.
Watch your man. Hey, let's go, 1D. Come on. They ain't got nothing. We turning it up. Under 10, 10.
At the end of the first half, the score is the Raiders 16, the Chiefs 3.
The weather is cooling down a bit. The leaves are starting to fall. Yes, it's that time of year again. Football season. And we all know the best part of any game day traditions are the ones that involve food. There's nothing like having everyone in your game day crew coming together to bring their best bites and argue over whose family makes the best chili. And while there's no need to mess with the perfection of game day classics, like a freshly grilled Oscar Mayer hot dog topped with Heinz ketchup and mustard, it's always fun to step out of your comfort zone and get creative with your recipes. Because there's nothing more fun than adding to your list of game day traditions, like making a creamy and delectable queso dip with Velveeta cheese that can be eaten with so much more than just chips. Now is the chance for people across the nation to find out whose game day eats reign supreme. It's your turn to show off your tasty game day food traditions. Go to www.gamedayfoodtraditions.com to share a photo of your game day food tradition to enter to win $10,000. Once again, that's www.gamedayfoodtraditions.com to enter to win $10,000.
And short track racing is where all racing started. I mean, it's even the NASCAR world started short track racing back in the day. And we just want to tell a great story not a story, we want to tell factual guidelines.
Hear the unfiltered, honest stories of how grassroots racers have and can achieve their racing goals. Fast Car to NASCAR. Hosted by NASCAR driver Mike Wallace.
On the Speed Sport Podcast Network. Here we go. Welcome to Fast Car to NASCAR with Mike Wallace. My name is Jeff Kent. Strap yourself in. Pull those belts tight as we take you on a journey from short tracks across America to super speedways and everything in between. We bring in the occasional guest, well, the weekly guest on this show. And today, if you know racing in Virginia or the Carolinas, you probably know this name. He's a driver. He's a team owner. 4-time NASCAR Whelen All-American Series national champion and owner of late model racing team Lee Pulliam Performance. It's Lee. Say hi to Mike Wallace, Lee.
Hey, guys. I appreciate you having me on today and look forward to the show.
Well, Lee, thank you for being on, and I really appreciate you taking the time. You know, I admire what you've done in short track racing, and especially you're still a really young guy. So, you're a 4-time champion of the NASCAR Whelen Series, used to be the Winston Racing Series, and I competed in that series, so I know how incredibly tough that is. So we've got everybody knowing all the success you have in the short track world, but how did Lee Pulliam become a champion? Where did you grow up in racing? Were you born into the sport? What's the cover story?
It's going to take a little while to go through this, but it's been a really cool ride for me. As a kid, I went to South Boston Speedway on Saturday nights with my mom and dad, and would go to Orange County and different racetracks. And, that's what we did as a family. We really didn't have the money, to race. And I always wanted to go-kart race and do stuff like that, but, you know, literally I grew up, I never wanted for anything and never knew that I went without anything, but, you know, my mom and dad, you know, I rode the school bus to school because they couldn't spend the extra money, gas money to come pick me up or take me to school. You know, Mom made one trip to town on Sunday to get groceries, and that was it. You know, we ate every meal at home. So, you know, to get where I am today has been a complete blessing and a long ride. I graduated high school early, went to college at night taking extra classes and graduated early. Got me a job as a diesel mechanic. I did all the welding and fabricating at a diesel mechanic shop, and got the nickname Fireball there. And, you know, I worked in the daytime and I go to college at night, and I was saving up every dollar I could save up. And before that, you know, I was working with my dad in the summers, logging, cutting trees, and just me and him saved up nickels and dimes, and we found a used race car for sale and basically went out on a limb and purchased it. And it took us about a year and a half to get everything together for it, and a lot of local businesses helped. The guy I worked for, he bought the engine for the car, and it was pretty amazing. I won like my 4th race out, and I'd never sat in anything in my entire life. And it just grew year after year after year, but it was a true grassroots, scratch claw get into the racing world.
So help me just a little bit, and I heard the story very clearly, but what do you think your first motivation? I know you went to the racetrack and you watched it, but wanting to be that driver, and as you said, you had to scratch and claw to make everything work, so you put a lot of effort in, to make that work. So what do you think was that initial drive to want to be a race car driver?
So I guess, you know, some families go to football games, some go to baseball games, but for me, you know, those guys, like, y'all, as a kid, you want to impress your parents, right? So I went to a racetrack with my parents, and Sam Art was my dad's hero, my mom's hero, you know, David Blankenship, Barry Begley, and then I grew up a tremendous Dale Earnhardt fan. If it, you know, I'd argue with the old guys in church, you know, Dale Earnhardt is the king, you know, and it was just something that just consumed my life, you know. So as a kid, I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be that Barry Begley, that David Blankenship, that Wayne Patterson on the local level, winning these races and making, you know, community proud, my family proud, and it just was a desire to compete from an early age. You know, it's just something. When we went to the racetrack, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I knew that's what I wanted to be. I've got pictures of me sitting in late model guys' cars when I was 4 or 5 years old. You know, we went down in the pits after every race to see the drivers, and it was just an immense love I had from the start.
Is there any one of those drivers that you become buddies with, friends with? He noticed you were a fan, or a little boy that came up to him that helped you in those early years, or just gave you some motivation? Maybe not helped you, but just talked to you, as we say as kids, patted us on the head and said, we'll see you next Saturday, you know?
Yeah, I'd say David Blankenship was one of those guys. We sat with his mom and dad in the stands a lot, and another guy was H.C. Sellers. You know, H.C. actually worked on his car some before I started racing, and that was my first hands-on experience working on cars. And H.C. gave me kind of a generic setup to take to the racetrack, so that's how we knew how to originally go. And you know, he'd give me pointers and tell me what this or that would do, and I just soaked it all in like a sponge.
Yeah. So Lee, I know who you are. Jeff knows who you are. Everybody in the Carolinas, Virginia, Tennessee know who you are. But a guy out in Colorado or in Wyoming who's going to be listening, explain the race cars that you're running. What is the first car you had? What kind of race car was that?
It was called a NASCAR Limited late model. So it was basically we run the late model stock series now, which is it's a not an offset chassis. It's not a straight wheel. It's called a perimeter chassis car, which is very similar to like what they would race on Sunday, built wise. We run engines somewhere around 500 horsepower and 3,100 pounds with the driver in it. So these cars look a lot like wood races on Sunday a few years ago before the new bodies. And you can find us basically from Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, and South Carolina. And that's pretty much where our cars consist of. But the first car I had was, the same type chassis, but just used. So I got it a lot cheaper, and probably 350 horsepower car.
Gotcha. So we set the stage there. Blankenship was your driver when you grew up, and you and Dad. But what was the chassis? I'm kind of into names of chassis builders. Do you remember what the name of the chassis was? Who the builder was of that first car?
Yeah, it was a used Rick Townsend chassis.
Your Townsend car. Okay.
Yep, that was the first car I ever sat in, and ran that car for several years, probably the first 4 or 5 years of my career, and then were able to get a Hedgecock car later on, as Townsend had unfortunately had to close the doors, and we got a Hedgecock car, and I've been there ever since.
Wow. So after the early introduction, you go out and you win your 4th race out. Isn't that what you said?
Yes, sir. Yep.
And that was in the limited late model series at that time?
Yeah, at South Boston Speedway. And I'll never forget, I went out there the first time to test, and the guy to beat back then was Bruce Anderson. And he was just really dominant at South Boston Speedway. And I was out there on the racetrack thinking I was doing something, and Bruce come by me at full speed, about blew me off the track. And I was kind of like, man, maybe I'm not cut out for this. But, I took the mentality that, if he could drive it in the corner that far, I could. If he could get on the gas at the end of pit wall instead of 3 car lengths later, I could. And, I spun the car out a few times. I made plenty of mistakes, but I just always approached it with the attitude where I wanted to learn. I wanted to be better. I tried to mimic the guy that was winning, and it always worked for me.
So I've talked to various racers about you over the years. I don't know if you remember, I called you a few years ago. I wanted to drive one of your cars at Richmond. Then I realized my ego was overriding my checkbook at that time. So, but
yes,
you become. They tell me you're very knowledgeable as a chassis man. You're not just a race car driver. You understand your cars. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, like I said, I'm basically racing my life, so I engulf myself with it. And for every part of the race car besides the chassis, I build at the shop, and it's not that I got somebody hired to build it. I build it. I build the lower A-frames. I build the spindles. I build the upper A-frames, sway bar arms, you name it, I can do it. But it's, I think it's part of being a complete race car driver, understanding how things work, understanding when I'm in the car. I pick up the throttle initially, and it's pushing. I know what I need to do, or I pick up the throttle and it's over rotating right here, or it gets loose late at the wall, or I'm loose on entry. I think it's really important to have a general understanding of other race cars and knowing what you're feeling and knowing what to change to complement that.
Okay, we got that. Now backing back up, you take that car, you win the 4th race out in it. Do you continue to win? Or was that just like, wow, I can't believe we won? Or did you just come out and did you make any enemies? Meaning, did the local guys go, man, who's this kid? And you kept beating them, or how did it work from there?
So we run basically the first couple of years of my career, we only run limited at South Boston. So that first year, we probably raced 12 races, and I think I won 2 of them. I won Rookie of the Year. And if I didn't win, I was normally on the rollback. So it was a lot of cutting and grinding and welding. And luckily, I was a fabricator, so I could fix a lot of the stuff myself. But all volunteer crews, so that all helped out. And it was a fun year, but it had its challenges too, and we moved into the second year racing limited, and I think I won 8 or 9 races that year and won the track championship at South Boston. So it kind of progressed fairly fast from there. But the first year, I think we ended up with 2 wins.
From that first year to the second year, what was the difference? Besides, you've done it for a year now, but how did you go from winning 2 races to 7 to 9 races? Or did you just get that good?
I just learned how to put myself in better situations. So a lot of times just a little bit of patience would have went a long way for a lot of racers. And I developed that patience of I don't need to take a lead on lap 7. We got a long race here. I can take a lead with 5 to go. I can take a lead with 10 to go. I can, just position myself a little bit better and take care of the car, and it paid dividends. And of course, I was getting better too. I'd never been in a race car before that rookie year. So as a driver, I was learning more of what I needed. I was learning more about the race cars and what it would do to if I did this. The first year, here I am. I'm racing a pair of 350 coilovers in the front and a pair of 175s in the back and we just moved across. If I was a little tight, I'd take some cross out. If I was a little free, we'd put some cross in. It was just very simple. And, the more I learned about these things, the more I learned what things did and geometry and jack and force, and just got better working on my man driving it.
Lee, what's really unique about that is Jeff, we interviewed Mark Martin, 2 weeks ago?
We did.
So you and Mark Martin, believe it or not, have your storylines compare so equally. Understand as you started with basic cars, then understanding the cars, and then you started winning races. So very cool.
Yeah, like I said, it has been a tremendous ride. And most people, if they wasn't there for it, or they just seen the later part of my career, that'd be hard to fathom where we came from. But I remember those days. I remember clawing and scraping for everything I could get, and it's really been cool. Of course, as a driver, I always wanted to make it to Sunday, right? I always thought I was good enough to compete on Sunday, and that part is, still like I never quite got that accomplished, but all the things we did accomplish, I am very proud of.
We're going to take a break, Lee, in just a second here, but when we come back, perhaps you're a 4-time champion. Maybe you can take us through one of those seasons, or maybe your favorite season, from beginning to end, and where you raced and how things went. So we'll take a timeout and come back. You're listening to Fast Car to NASCAR with Mike Wallace on the Speed Sport Podcast Network and NASCAR Digital Media.
Before we get back to Fast Car 2 NASCAR with Mike Wallace. With everything from resto mods to numbers matching classics, American muscle to European exotics, watch as a dazzling array of vehicles cross the block at the GAA Classic Cars Auction. Tune in on MAV TV Thursday, September 9th for Speed Sport Presents the GAA Classic Cars Auto Auction. Check your local listings for channel and time.
Welcome back. This is Fast Car to NASCAR with Mike Wallace on the Speed Sport Podcast Network and NASCAR Digital Media. Today's guest driver, team owner, Lee Pulliam, 4-time champion, 4 times. Say hi once again to Mike Wallace.
Hey, Mike. It's glad to be here.
Yeah, Lee, I am just intrigued by sitting here thinking about your story, and it isn't a story, it's just facts. It's how it all works. So we got you starting basically in 2007, kid out of the grandstand, dad's supportive, mom's supportive. You go out and win a couple races, you come back the following year and say 2008, you win 8 or 9. And then I really believe by 2012 is when you were going to start running for a championship. But what did you do between that 2009 era or 2010 till you decided to go run for a NASCAR championship? What kind of cars did you race, or did you just continue to run the same type of cars?
So 2009, I moved up to late model. That was my first year running late model at South Boston Speedway, and it was incredibly tough. I mean, you're talking about car counts from 28 to 30 cars a week. Philip Morris, Wayne Ramsey, Deke McCaskill. I mean, some of the biggest names.
Those are some heavy hitter names you just laid out there.
Yeah. So I really had to cut my teeth and learn with some of the best of the best. And you know, it was a tough year. It was one of those years. I won one race. I did win Rookie of the Year at South Boston, but I was still competing in that same car that I initially bought. Just had put a late model motor in it, and I was competing against guys that build brand new cars every year. So it was tough. It was nothing easy about it, and we worked 10 times harder than ever before, just trying to run 5th to 10th, you know, but I learned a lot, you know. I learned a lot being on the track with those guys. I learned how skilled these guys were, you know. When you move up to that next division, it's just like kind of like starting over, and I definitely had my work cut out for me. And 2010, we get some more sponsors, some more people come on board, and I'm able to build a new Hitchcock car. And that kind of turned my career around in a late model deal. You know, I won 5 races that year, finished second in the late model points at South Boston against all those big names, and you know, just had really kind of a breakthrough year. I sat on the pole at Martinsville for the Taco Bell 300. I almost won it. I dominated halfway. Dennis Setzer was running second to me pretty much the whole race. And after halfway, we come in and got tires, and the guys make some adjustments. Well, apparently a zip tie had broke, and the spark plugs got on the header, and it burnt the wires. So I lost 2 cylinders in halfway, and I run 5th at Martinsville, basically on 6 cylinders. So at the biggest race of the year. So it was heartbreaking because I dominated the whole race up until that point. But it was pretty much the time in my career that I had really started to excel.
Now, at this point in your career, are you still working that regular job at the diesel shop and racing, or are you now all in the race world?
No, I was still working a regular job, and so I was actually working. I was actually logging at this point when I quit limited racing. I went back into logging, and my late model career, I logged in the daytime, and I'd get home 7 o'clock. You know, logging, you don't work 8 to 5. You work when the sun comes up to when it goes back down. So I'd get home, you know, and I'd be already whooped, but I was, you know, I'd put 4, 5, 6 hours more into the race car that night, and all volunteer guys show up. So worked a whole lot of hours to be able to do what we did, and it slowly probably 2011 was probably my first really big year. We won, I think, 18 out of 20 races at Motor Mile Speedway. I started racing there, finished third in the nation to Philip Morris and Keith Rocco. So it was the first year I got invited to the NASCAR banquet and in Charlotte in December. And when I got to see that, and I got to see that, you know, how cool it was and how close I was to being a national champion in 2011, you know, I knew exactly where my focus was going to be in 2012.
Well, those banquets, they motivate you, don't they? You see those guys sitting up front, who's the champion. I remember going, they had the Winston Racing Series banquet in Nashville, Tennessee at Opryland. And I won the regional championship, and Max Prestwood won the national championship back in that time. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, I want to be him. I want to be up on that stage, and I got to do whatever I got to do to make that happen. So you got motivated there at the banquet, and I'm assuming that led you into your quest for one of your first championships?
Yeah, so I really had never paid attention to the national stuff because, you know, I was just kind of overwhelmed from working in the daytime and racing on the weekend. I never even looked at that stuff. So I didn't even realize how close I was in 2011 to winning the deal. I mean, a couple of races and I was a 2011 champion, you know, that's how close it was. But I didn't even realize it. So I went to the banquet, and I had to give a speech for finish third in the nation, and then I started studying the point system and how it worked. And like I said, I never really even followed it. And 2012, I basically set a goal. Hey, we're going to go out, we're going to race South Boston, and we're going to race Motor Mile as much as possible and see what happens. And really had an unbelievable season. Won 22 races and beat Keith Rocco. By at that time, it was the biggest separation from first to second in a national championship ever. So basically dominated in 2012, and anywhere we went, we basically went to victory lane. So it was definitely a special year.
Lee, you said you studied the point system. What exactly do you mean by that?
So I just I didn't really know. Like the NASCAR point system, they based off of, at that time it was off of your best 18 races, and then you had to have like I think it was 20 cars to be a full field. So like in 2011, I probably could have run 2 or 3 different races at say Motor Mile that I didn't go to, or say South Boston, like either way, and probably could have won it, but I didn't follow it. Like I had a great year in 2011, but I didn't understand that, hey, if I'd have raced 3 or 4 more times, I'd have had the points to win this deal. So like it just was something that was never on my radar. So with the national points deal, you've got to race a lot. You got to win wherever the car count is. So you kind of chase the tracks that have the best car count to win this deal. And so I just basically studied and learned, it really isn't a lot to it, but I just didn't know anything about it really at the time.
Well, when you talk about that points thing, and I'm going to reference back because I put you in the same category as a Larry Phillips. I remember Larry growing up, or when I grew up around Larry, he was trying to explain that to me, and I didn't understand it. He said, look, I got to race where there's plenty of cars. I can't go where there's hardly nobody, and then I got to win. So you just explained it a little bit more to me and to everyone. But so 2012, you go out there and you dominate, sounds like. Car difference, people difference, just everything's going well. What do you think that... not that you weren't running good before. You were already running good, but now you put it all together and you understood the points.
Yeah, like I said, 2011 was really kind of that breakthrough year. I think 2010, I got that new car built and had the equipment equal to what everybody had. And from that point on, it was me improving as a driver. So I actually raced that same car for like 7 or 8 years from that point on. So I think it was just me improving as a driver. I had basically the same guys with me at the racetrack every week. And, we all was improving as a team. We got confidence. Baseball's confidence, football's confidence, racing's confidence. So when we showed up at the racetrack, we expected to win. And, that means a lot. When you have that mentality when you roll through the gate that, hey, if we do everything that we know how to do and I do my job behind the wheel, there's a really good chance we'll go to victory lane tonight. And that confidence just kept snowballing. And we just, once you get that confidence and you start winning, a lot of times your competitors get more in left field because they start really just throwing stuff at the race cars because they feel like they're getting beat badly, so they have to work and try to find something different. Well, a lot of times it's a lot easier to go backwards in racing than it is to go forwards, and we just was in a really good spot.
Gotcha. Well, the one thing I need to get back was to Jeff Kent's question. Sorry I deviated around that, Jeff. We're gonna go back to about every year you won the championship. But what was your favorite championship year, and why was it a favorite championship year?
All of them were special. 2012, 2013, won back-to-back, and this was when I was single. I wasn't married at the time. 2015, that was my first championship after I was married. But 2017 is probably the most special for me because that was my first championship as a dad. So I got to take my daughter, even though she was young, she got to travel with me. And you know how demanding it is to race. Once you have that kid, you have responsibility at home. Plus, you're putting in all the effort to go to the racetrack. So it was a very grueling year and a lot of work, but it was really cool to have my family there to experience it.
When you're talking about having your child with you, I actually follow you on Facebook. What do they call that? Vicariously? It's kind of like shadowing someone.
Stalking.
Stalking is a stalker. Okay. Well, when you admire somebody's ability, you try to figure out what they're doing. But boy, it seems like you're wonderful. You're a wonderful family man. Any special thing about when you first had your child there going to the racetrack with you? I know now they were little bitty, so you wouldn't. They just tag along, or what's one memory maybe you remember of that 2017 year when now you're a family man at the racetrack, or a particular race you won for whatever reason that night?
Yeah, I'd say there was a lot of them, a lot of nights at that time, she did sleep well at night, so, you'd be up half the night with her, helping her, and helping mom, with her, and then you got to be at the racetrack at 8 o'clock in the morning. So there was a lot of really rewarding wins, at the end of it, at the end of the night when you won and you got the little girl in victory lane with you. And, as I said before, as a kid, I always wanted to make my mom proud. And now as a dad, I want to make my kid proud, so all those moments, I know she probably doesn't remember very much of it, but for me, having those victory lane photos together and being able to talk to her about that as she ages, and like, hey, Dad used to be cool, Dad used to go to victory lane and win these races, and so she was so small, like I want to do it again with her older, but it was still special to me because it was just a lot of work that went into it, and I was balancing being a good dad plus balancing being a really good race car driver.
Lee, it sounds to me like you're one that doesn't require a lot of sleep. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think I'm paying for it now, but yeah, I definitely went without sleep for 15 years now. Ever since I started racing, the lack of sleep has definitely been there. So.
I'll tell you what, we're creeping up on another break, so we'll go ahead and do that now. But maybe when we come back, we can segue from being a driver to a team owner and the new challenges that presents. You're listening to Fast Car to NASCAR with Mike Wallace on the Speed Sport Podcast Network and NASCAR Digital Media. Before we get back to Fast Car to NASCAR with Mike Wallace, Kenny Wallace started the tradition, and we keep burning rubber, baby. Burnin' Rubber Radio goes behind the scenes of all your favorite divisions of racing, from NASCAR to ARCA, IRL to IMSA. If it's raced, they talk about it. Join Andy DeLay and the crew weekly to find out on the Speed Sport Podcast Network, NASCAR Digital Media, and your favorite podcast platforms. Welcome back. You're listening to Fast Car to NASCAR with Mike Wallace on the Speed Sport Podcast Network and NASCAR Digital Media. Today's guest, Lee Pulliam, driver, team owner, Lee Pulliam Performance. If you race in Virginia, the Carolinas, or Tennessee, you know the name. And here's Mike Wallace.
Well, Lee, since Jeff did such a great intro about the performance business, is there somewhere, we'll ask this question now, and then I'm going to get back to some other normal stuff. Where does somebody go to find more about Lee Pullman? Or you got any T-shirts or swag or anything that you're selling that they can log on to and buy?
Shameless plug.
Yeah,
hey, I'm a racer, man. Got to help your buddies out.
Yeah, we got a website, www.leepulliamperformance.com, and it's got some information on there about some of our drivers, and then got some photos and some stats and stuff about some of the things we do for different people. But it's got a lot about us, and we sell shirts and hats and stuff like that at all the races that we go to. So if you see a Lee Pulliam Performance car running somewhere, we have all the stuff in the trailer with us. So.
All right. Yep. Well, hey, we're going to touch a bunch of subjects here, but I want to ask you, because when I first heard about Lee Pullman winning all these races, and at least I started focusing on it, you drove and correct me if I'm saying any of this wrong, because, again, we don't really know each other that well, but I admire everything you do. You drove a car that said Kiker on it, a number 5 car. Was that a lot of success, or am I just thinking I've seen that in a lot of wins?
So Kiker, Mr. Eddie and Travis Kiker, I used to race against those guys. Frank Denny drove for them. Different guys over the years, Brandon Dean. And in the end of 2013, I just won my second national title. And, I'm pulling up in a little, 30-some foot gooseneck, trailer and old dually and stuff. And, Mr. Kiker, they had they had a Renegade stacker and really nice equipment. And he approached me at the end of 2013 and asked if I'd be interested in driving for him. So, of course, I was excited and took the opportunity. And he had one car himself. And then, I told him, I said, I want to run my car as well. His number's always been 5. We'll decal it as number 5 and we'll race that. So we took his car. My first race was a Myrtle Beach 400, and which is a prestigious event around here. And we took it there and sat on the outside pole. I passed Ben Rhodes on the white flag to win the race, and that was my very first time ever in the Myrtle Beach Speedway, my very first time driving for him. And he had a Marlowe car. That was my first time actually driving a Marlowe car, and went to victory lane. So, and from that point on, the rest of my career, I drove for Mr. Kiker.
When Mr. Kiker asked you to drive that car, in 2013, were you in awe? Did you go, all right, I've made it now? Somebody's asked me to drive the race car.
It was definitely a surreal moment because I knew that I had been on even though I'd had a lot of success, I would take my winnings and I was balancing my checkbook on Sunday, making sure checks were going to go through, cover the tire bill, making sure I didn't have to call the tire guy and say, hey, can you not put that check into Wednesday because I got to make a deposit Tuesday. I'd raced like that my whole career. And not that we had an open checkbook, but it was pretty much if we needed something, for the most part, we could get it. So from that point on, it really changed my career and took a lot of stress and a lot of work from off of my shoulders from having to run to chase down sponsors and really beat the bushes to get the money to go racing and really helped me a lot.
I love the backstories of things. Mr. Kiker, what did they do, or what kind of business were they in?
Mr. Kiker, he owns a tree service in Indian Trail, North Carolina. So he does a lot of commercial tree work around the Mooresville area. He does stuff like Norman and, pretty much all around the Charlotte area. He contracts and comes and cuts your trees out of your yard and mulches them up and gets it out of there. So,
so you could help me on a deal for trees.
He's always working a deal.
I know the man to call.
You know the man to call? Beautiful. I'll call you
Write
on that.
that down, Kiker. How do you spell that?
It's Kiker, number 5.
That's right.
No, that car is famous, man. I was wondering who he was or what, because I've heard you talk about him a few times. But Jeff, what'd you have? You were talking about the performance business, or?
Well, let's talk about Lee Pulliam Performance. I mean, in the transition from being a driver to a team owner, you already said you were writing checks and balancing your checkbook once a week. So I imagine there's a lot more of that involved with running the company these days, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably in about 2012, I started keeping up some other cars on the side just to kind of help me be more at the shop. So that got me out of the logging woods a little bit and was able to pay my bills plus be able to be in the shop more working. So that started about then, and pretty much end of 2013, I took out a loan and built the current shop that we're in now. And since 2014, we've been in that shop working full time.
How many cars do you currently have?
This year we're keeping up cars for Brandon Pierce and Jonathan Schaefer in the Cars Tour. And then I do Darren Cockrum, which is a limited sportsman car at Motor Mile Speedway. So doing those 3 cars this year. I had Matt Kenseth drive for me at the Denny Hamlin race a few years ago. We finished 3rd behind, I think it was Matt Boland 1, Kyle Busch 2nd. I've had Chase Elliott drive my cars. Different people, Kaz Gralla, Dalton Sargent. So some pretty big names that made it up the ranks in the racing. Corey Heim drove for me last year. Had a really successful year with him, and he's doing a great job for Venturini in the ARCA Series now, and racing for Kyle Busch some in the Truck Series and doing an awesome job. So definitely been able to work with some talented people over the years.
Just tell or explain to everybody that's listening, when you use the word taking care of their car, does that mean that it's their race car, or those are your race cars? And how much do you take them to the racetrack for them, or you just prep them in the shop? What do you do in that aspect?
So we take care of everything. The cars belong to me, and basically it's just like, Mr. Hendrick or Stewart or whoever, it takes X amount of dollars to run these cars a year. So, they have sponsorship to go racing, and we provide the team and the people and the equipment and trucks and trailers, and, they show up to the racetrack to race, and, they can come to the shop sometimes and learn about things and, help out a little bit and just try to get a better understanding. But we basically take care of the whole aspect. We crew the cars and do it all. So if they wreck them, we fix them back like they were new. And, pretty much just it's kind of like cup racing, but just on the local level.
Yeah. So are you about tapped out on the quantity of cars that you can take care of, or you still got room for more? I mean, I guarantee there's some young man or young lady out there listening to you right now and thinking, I want to do what he does, and I need to get in his race cars. They win races.
I know a guy that's about 62.
Yeah, he's sitting right next to you, isn't he, right now? Why do you always know where I'm leading with this stuff?
Yeah. Racing changes so much. So, we go through that every year with different drivers and potential drivers, and for our goal is to see our drivers make it up the ladder to the next level and just continue on. So it is a lot of turnover in what we do. The toughest thing right now, I think, in any business is finding good people. So, we're at the point with people where we like to do 2 to 3 cars a year. And that's about where we're at with people right now. It's just tough to find the right people. And to put in the right places, because the last thing we want to do is not provide the absolute very best that you can set foot in. So that's my number one goal. I'm a big guy of quality over quantity. So I want my race cars to be the best ones out there, and it's a very limited amount of space here at LPP, but if you're driving for us, we feel like you're in some of the best stuff there is.
Well, let me ask you this: is Lee Pulliam Performance chasing a championship this year?
Yeah, well, we're racing the Cars Tour, so we do a lot of traveling. We've got